10 games into the Premier League season and things are beginning to take shape. Well, at the very top and very bottom of the table anyway. Otherwise, it's a mid-table dogfight featuring as many as a dozen teams separated by a handful of points. So which of these middlemen are happy to be part of the pack and which will feel they should be doing better? Brand new weekend of Premier League football lies before us, but before it gets underway, let's take stock of the season so far and get a sense of which clubs fans have been pleasantly surprised and which, well, not so much. Here are a couple of tonight's talking points. We, of course, it's not just me and voices in my head. We've got a guest, a real live one and a very good one as well. From England, it's Dominic Fifield of The Athletic who joins us. Dom, I'm going to get on to one of your favourite subjects, Crystal Palace Football Club, in just a moment. But before we do that, let's have a quick look at the Carabao Cup, which served up delights, treats and all sorts of fun and games. The really extraordinary game, of course, the one at Anfield that ended up in that 5-4 penalty shootout win after a 5-5 result between Liverpool and Arsenal. Otherwise, though, Chelsea surprised by Manchester United. And take a look at those results because now we can move on to the draw that it gave us. Colchester United, of course, the team that everyone focusing on, the lowest ranked of them as a League Two side, and their reward, well, a dream encounter with Manchester United. Oxford United of League One are up against the reigning Carabao Cup or League Cup holders, Manchester City. It's Villa against Liverpool and Everton against Leicester in all Premier League affairs. But how much fun was it? Of course, it was Halloween, which meant we got headlines like this: 10 ghoul thriller. That's a good one, wasn't it? And of course, what did Rashford do? Rashford scored a screamer. So it was fun. And Dom, I'd just like to talk about the fun that we've had. This competition, which very often is I suppose, maligned by coaches who don't want to play too much football, consistently serves up fun because we see fresh faces, don't we?
Yeah, you're right. We see fringe players, but we also see the kids that are coming through. I think we had 4 teenagers playing for Liverpool in midweek, which summed it up. We've a lot of Arsenal players in that game as well at the start of their careers. If you look at Martinelli, I think he scored his 6th and 7th goals of the season in that match, in that 5-5 thrilling game. I was at the Bridge. We're used to seeing a young Chelsea team this season, but United, there were a few younger faces in that lineup as well, and it was a morale-boosting victory for them with 2 splendid goals from Marcus Rashford en route.
Of course, the narrative has moved on here, hasn't it, Tom? Because now, of course, we always wonder, as you get into the business end of this tournament, just how pragmatic the managers become and who they pick and how many first-teamers play rather than the kids. But, of course, in Liverpool's case, we might actually see a very young team put out, according to Jurgen Klopp's theorising.
Well, yeah, they've got major problems at Liverpool in terms of the scheduling of this. They're due to playing in the World Club Championships when the quarterfinals of this competition take place. So they're having to trying to find a slot basically in the calendar where they can fit in this game. It wouldn't be a surprise if they played an even younger team in that quarterfinal against Aston Villa. I mean, but you know, you're right. That is a bit of a thrill in itself. I mean, I think Liverpool have got quality there, the depth of pedigree and up and coming promise to make a mark, even if they play what will be a second or a third team.
Yeah, I look forward to that. OK, all right, as promised, let's get into the Premier League this weekend. An 11th round is just around the corner here. I want to have a little look at this. The point I made at the top of the show is this. You know, I think on merit, you look at Chelsea and Leicester being in that top 4. Of course, we know all about these ones here. And I think to an extent, if you look at the bottom of the table, unfortunately, I fear that the bottom 3 or the relegated 3 might come from these bottom 4. But if we just squeeze this down a little bit here and find ourselves down at, say, Brighton, OK, on 12 points, then look at that. There's only the 4 points really separating them all the way up here to the teams in 5th and 6th places, Arsenal and Crystal Palace. This is the sort of mid-table that I want to talk about today. And if we take a little look at the fixtures, then we get ourselves into what's coming along this weekend. You have got some key ones, in my opinion, in terms of whether or not teams continue the good work or whether or not you see some of the teams that haven't done that well showing what they can do. By that, I would say Wolves. Can they demonstrate something against Arsenal? We know they're capable of it. Let's have a little look, shall we, at the likes of Sheffield United and Burnley, who I would count both as being maybe slight overachievers here. What about the likes of West Ham? What about the likes of Everton, who find themselves against Spurs? What about the likes of maybe Leicester as being overachieving? Anyway, let's get into this right now by having a little chat about where we are. I want to talk about that Crystal Palace game against Leicester to start off with here. This one recently has favoured Crystal Palace, and if it goes their way again, then Roy Hodgson and his team will continue a fantastic recent run. This headline there makes a very good point. pound for pound, he's doing as really good a job as anybody. Now, Dom, what I want to talk about here is what I've seen from Palace this year was when you consider a team that didn't really invest that much over the summer, in fact, fought to hang on to its two best players, lost one of them, the other one didn't go. We're talking about Zaha. I've noticed here that Crystal Palace are using him in a different way. So I'd like to illustrate this one. His changing role in the side, as we can see here, would suggest that he is not creating as much or shooting as much. He is actually tackling more, he's recovering the ball more, he's being used in a different position. If we go back to the West Ham game, rather than being up top on the left, where we're used to seeing him playing as a winger or one of two strikers, look where he's been operating in a sort of more disciplined right midfield role at times this season. Is it leading to a better collective effort, Dom, for Crystal Palace, do you think?
Well, it's an interesting point, and you're right. Roy has shaken it up a bit in terms of Zaha's positioning. I'd argue that maybe when he plays on the left with Van Aanholt behind him, that Palace are naturally then defensively weaker on that side. Van Aanholt, his defending at the moment isn't the best. He's good going forward. When Zaha plays on the other side, he's got Joel Ward behind him, who is basically an out-and-out defender. So that maybe gives Palace a bit more solidity there. But though I would add that at Arsenal in their last game, it was Andros Townsend who came in for Jeffrey Floop. And Zaha switched back to his favoured left-sided position. He likes cutting in from that left. That is where he's done he's inflicted his most damage on opponents over the years. I think with Wilf, given the summer that he had and the issues he had in terms of the desperate desire to leave the club and go and play at an elite side, I think reintegrating him back into the setup required a bit more industry, a bit more work ethic. That was the basic proviso. That was what he had to show first of all. In the last few weeks, we've seen a bit more of that flair creep back into his game, and he's been more of a threat. He was excellent at Arsenal on Sunday. And I think we'll see that more and more in the weeks to come, but I suspect that will be back on the left. I imagine that Andros Townsend will earn his way a way back into that starting lineup, and he has actually been playing quite well himself of late, and we'll see that triumvirate up top of Zaha on the left, Townsend on the right, and probably Ayew through the middle, given that he's so industrious and works his socks off for the team.
All right, OK, let's have a quick look at a bit of feedback from Mohamed Idris here, saying Palace at home is always a strong team to beat, but the problem is their attacking play is predictable, I think you mean, and easy for Leicester to take advantage. Yeah, that's the fascinating thing about this weekend's game. Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Dom, correct me, have you only scored 8 goals this season? I think it's something like that. Up against a team that scored 9 last time out, right? 10
now, I think, isn't it? I think we crept on with thanks to those 2 at Arsenal. But yeah, look, they don't score goals. They don't. That's the reality. That they're a stubborn team to break down, and the onus will be on Leicester to cut through them on Sunday. I actually think that might play into Palace's hands. I suspect that's been the problem a lot of the times that Leicester have played Crystal Palace. They think they can unpick them, and they get hit on the counter.
The other thing as well about Leicester is this, Brendan Rodgers quite rightly is having a dilemma selection-wise right now, because if you take a look at the problem, this was an article that I read from one of the Midlands newspapers. He's got a problem, his players are just too good at the moment, and that's because in midweek they were fantastic as well. If we take a little look at the top performers, it bears this out, and you'll see this, you know, from Jamie Vardy, whose hat-trick against Southampton took him right to the top of the charts here, into the assists here, and we're not even talking about Maddison here. The guy you want to look at here is the really informed youngster Harvey Barnes, right into the more industrious side of midfield, where you don't just have Wilfred Ndidi putting in the tackles, you've got Ricardo Pereira putting in the tackles as well, and of course the remarkable Ndidi is the man who leads the way in terms of interceptions too. This is a side that has got so much about it, and this is a team that, Tom, I mean, just very quick, a brief answer on that. Do you see Leicester sustaining it this season?
Definitely. That midfield is so youthful, so exuberant, they're going places.
OK, absolutely. Let's move on right now, because I'd like to talk about another couple of clubs. I highlighted this in the fixtures, Sheffield United and Burnley, but in particular I want to talk about Sheffield United right now. Chris Wilder, and the thing about Chris Wilder is that he is so resolutely down to earth. You know, even when they produce wonderful performances, you can see just how he's not getting carried away, and that's what he's been saying when he was talking to, I think it was the Yorkshire Post this week here. Let's look at a tweet that I saw about him, and it just reminds you just what a consistent body of work they have put together. This came out a week or so back. 79 league games won since becoming Sheffield United manager in May 2016. Only Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola have won more in England's top 4 tiers in this period. Messiah. That one from Opta Joe. That tells you something. Unfashionable, yes, Dom, but very, very, very good, and somebody who deserves credit.
He won't care that he's unfashionable. I mean, he's perfectly fashionable for Sheffield United. He is a blade. I mean, that is his club, and he's just been a perfect fit ever since he came in. The progress he's made has been surprising and remarkable in equal measures. But he actually, if you look back over his managerial career, he's had success pretty much every club he's been at. So maybe we shouldn't be too surprised at the way it's going. I mean, they've been magnificent so far this season. There will be blips. They know that. It's going to be a long, hard season, but they're well on the way to getting those 36, 37 points that will keep them up.
And the good thing about them as well is their defensive strength. Just a quick look at this. Anyone who knows Fantasy Premier League will recognise that if you've got Sheffield United players in your team, defensively you've been picking up some bonus points there. 4 clean sheets, second best in the league for that. Tied first with just 8 goals conceded. No penalties as yet. That talks about discipline really there. First for clearances, second for interceptions. They are a solid, strong defensive unit. Just one quick one here about Sean Dyche. There's not much new to say about Sean Dyche, but just a wonderful piece by Andy Hunter that I saw earlier on this week. And this was a really nice piece here, just because he is doing so many good things that you're getting these stories coming about his anniversary and his character and his personality. If you have a chance, just Google, find some cool stuff about Sean Dyche and enjoy it. Right, okay, we're going to take a break because I want to come back and spend a bit more time on one or two of the clubs who maybe will feel that mid-table is not where they should be based on pre-season hype. That's up next. Show if we possibly can. Welcome back. We're talking about the Premier League weekend that lies ahead of us and focusing really on this mid-table scramble. I want to talk about Everton's very important encounter with Spurs, and where are they? Neither in the top half of the table. That despite the fact that at times earlier in the season you thought to yourselves, yes, certainly Everton have bought well and maybe they can challenge for the top 6, and Spurs, well, that's what they have to be doing. Why not, I wonder? We've spoken about Spurs a lot recently. Let's focus a bit more on the home team at Goodison Park, for whom Marco Silva and company have just not been getting it right. We're 100% behind Marco. Well, this was Mason Holgate, who's played an important part for the club in recent times, coming out and backing a manager who is consistently under fire from fans. But the problem with Everton is that they just haven't been getting it done on the road. They've looked like a soft touch at teams. They've conceded from set pieces a bit more than they should really have done. And even at home, they're no longer as invincible as they are. Dominic Fifield of The Athletic is joining me for today's show. Your take on Marco Silva and Everton. We've had a lot of time to look at Marco Silva as a coach in the Premier League. What about his Everton project, given the investment, Dom? Should they be doing better?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it should be doing better. I've been sceptical about Marco Silva ever since he came into English football. I feel his team's plateaued quite early, and I think that's what's happened at Everton yet again. You could look at Hull, you could look at Watford for different reasons. He's got more quality at his disposal here at Everton, but they don't look the properly balanced squad, properly balanced team. There's too much uncertainty around it all. I think they lack a natural goal scorer up front, which is a major drawback in that division. And I do wonder the next result that goes against him, whether that will be it for Marco Silva in the Premier League. And it's a tricky game this weekend. Yeah,
they negotiated a game, didn't they, against Watford, but that was the League Cup. Let's have a quick word about Spurs. About Everton, what they're doing home and away. This is the thing that really concerns me, because there was a time when you'd say, right, at home they're going to be fine. Right? Not a problem, because Goodison whips them up and everything like that. Even that has started to just wobble a little bit for them. So that's a glance at their competition results. Dom, I want to talk about Spurs. I want to move this along right now, because this is a slightly abstract angle on Spurs. We've talked so much about Pochettino. We've spoke so much about the players who might want to be away from their dressing room. He came out and spoke about the Fly on the Wall documentary. This is the fascinating thing. Spurs, the latest subject of one of these really entertaining documentaries. He said, it's a problem. He said, I've got to be a coach, I've got to be this, I've got to be that, and I've got to be a film director as well. And he was only half joking, I think. It could lead to some spectacular entertainment. Remember, Klopp said no, didn't he? Klopp said, no, we're not having it. This is a distraction that maybe Spurs don't need right now. Agree?
Couldn't agree more. I mean, the camera crew was at the back of the press conference room at Anfield when they lost up there last weekend, and it is a distraction. It'll be brilliant television, much better television than the Manchester City documentary where the team's winning every week. It's far more fascinating for us to watch a car crash happening in front of us, to be honest. But for him, it makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Right, bit of feedback here for you on Everton. Victor, a win over Spurs at home could be what the Toffees and Marco Silva need to kickstart the season. I think, according to what Dom's saying, it is desperately what they need. Prem Kumar saying Everton are going through a rough patch where they have a good talented squad with the addition of Keane and Iwobi, just not able to gel and get the results. But how much time do you need? This has been the story of Everton for some time now. Let's move on now to Arsenal against Wolves. And listen, we spoke a lot about Arsenal. We spoke about Granit Xhaka. If you haven't seen the statement that Arsenal released on his behalf today, make sure you have a look at that. That's taken an unpleasant turn. But I'm going to talk about Wolves right now. Wolves are a team that I think we all really, as neutrals, loved last season for what they'd done. But their reward for it was playing an awful lot of football. This is what they've done. They've had to play 21 games, if you go back to those early rounds of the Europa League here. Along the way, they've actually only lost 4 matches. And so theoretically, you could say if they'd just turned a few of those draws in the Premier League into wins, they'd be doing a lot better. But this was a side of whom we expected a lot more. Nuno Espirito Santo is basically saying the problem has been our slow starts. We saw it again last time out against Newcastle United. For some reason or other, they've just taken a while to grow into games, and that is the problem. What we do know about them is that when they're good, they are brilliant. This tweet summing it up, this goes back to that City one. This was from Danny Gabardon, former Premier League defender. Wolves, one of the few teams in the league who could do that to City. What they did, of course, tactically one of the best managers in the league. And remember, just 2 seasons ago, a championship side. Right, Dom, lots to work with there. Firstly, is Nuno one of the best tacticians around? And are Wolves maybe suffering from a league position that doesn't reflect the qualities they possess?
Definitely on Nuno, I think he's been a breath of fresh air. He's been excellent for them, whether they're in the Championship, which isn't an easy division to get out of, even with investment, and then into the Premier League to achieve Europa League qualification after that first year was astonishing. Interesting times, though, that I think Fossen, the owners, have invested about £235 million in transfer fees since they took over. That they're now talking about trying to make Wolves self-sufficient. And I do wonder whether actually what this team might need is more investment in January, because when teams compete in the Europa League and they have this cluttered schedule, it's often in the back end of a season where it catches up on them. And you know, if fatigue kicks in and injuries kick in, then Wolves could find themselves quite stretched in the run-in, and you know that could be to their detriment.
Well, if there's one thing they can do, I'd imagine it would be to move smartly and operate smartly in the transfer market. We've also seen Adama Traore demonstrating that he's more than just potential. Gibbs White is a player of whom much is expected. More feedback, Prem Kumar. I feel Wolves are going through the Europa League syndrome. Yeah, that's what we were talking about. The other top 6 clubs face in Europe, not a big enough squad. Yeah, Dom's made that point entirely. I think Victor was speaking about the same thing as well. But unlike Burnley last season, with respect to Burnley, Dom, I think Wolves are a different entity entirely. I think we've seen, by virtue of the results they've gained, if you look at what they've done, Wolves, in their short time in the top flight, they've beaten just about all the big teams. And when they do so, they look a class act, don't they? So, crystal ball gazing time, do you think they are once again a top 6 side this season?
I think top 7 or 8, to be honest, given the scheduling. I think that will be an excellent season for them and will allow them to carry on building towards being a top 6 team.
All right, Dom, thanks very much. It's been a busy one, but I'm really glad we got those insights from you into a couple of clubs that maybe we don't always talk about. Have yourself a great weekend. Enjoy that Palace game, and we'll see you again soon. As far as this show is concerned, we're going to come back with Fantasy Premier League. Who do you need as your captain? I'm saying this guy. It's giving you a chance to win a trip to Stand Red at Anfield itself. All you've got to do is go to foxsportsasia.com/Stand Red and tell us in 25 words or less who's your favourite Liverpool player and why. And you might just be the one singing You'll Never Walk Alone with the Kop. That's a great competition and it's a great opportunity for you guys. But will Liverpool keep it going this weekend? Well, let's get now into my weekend watch. So, the Reds may not be winning all the way, but they're still unbeaten. They travel to Villa Park, and I just wonder this. Can Villa now exploit any signs of defensive uncertainty in this Liverpool team, especially if Matip is ruled out and if Jack Grealish is past fit? It's a really good game this weekend. Let's move on to Bournemouth against Manchester United right now, where we find Rashford a talking point, and Bournemouth looking maybe just a little bit flat. They haven't been scoring goals recently. In fact, the only goal they've had lately came from David Luiz in the shape of an own goal. Maybe United got another chance there. On to Watford against Chelsea right now. This is interesting, this. The midweek defeat in the Cup might just turn to be what Frank Lampard and Chelsea's youngsters needed. A little bit of a kick there for a team that have been flying. Watford have tightened up defensively under Quique Sanchez-Flores, but I really feel that Chelsea, who've scored so many goals away from home, are really dangerous when they travel. And lastly, Manchester City, Southampton, my. Now, the Saints got away with a very gentle beating in the Cup in midweek, but with City unleashing their full-strength Premier League 11 this weekend, well, the spectre of another 9-0 simply cannot be ignored. Right, okay, that's my weekend watch. Let's turn our attention right now to a little bit of Fantasy Premier League. So with an 11th game week of Fantasy Premier League just around the corner, look who's just around the corner here is Mark McGettigan, the FPL General. Good to have you with us, Mark. Right, let's get straight into this one. We've been having a look earlier on today at the most transferred in players by FPL managers, and amazingly enough, 4 of the 5 are Leicester players. But you can understand that, can't you?
Yeah, understandable after the massacre last week, scoring 9 goals against Southampton. So, yeah, big movement in the market for the Leicester players this week. I still feel Crystal Palace away is not an easy fixture this weekend, so I still don't have any of them. I'm happy to wait another week.
Yeah. Recent history tells us that this is not a fixture that will favour Leicester City at all here. Let's talk a bit about bargains, because this season has been disappointing for many FPL managers, so we're beginning to think laterally. Could you name a few for us?
Yeah, a couple of options here. I really like Martial now that he's back fit for United. Some good fixtures coming up as well. I think him and Rashford are going to link up really well over the next couple of weeks. I like Yarmolenko as well at West Ham. He caught my eye last week. Got himself an assist, a couple of bonus points, and he created 4 big chances in that game as well. Could have scored himself, so I think he's a great price at $6 million this season. Home fixture this weekend as well. And when it comes to Brighton, this guy, my fellow Irishman Connolly, he's ideal for people who want to play maybe a 4-4-2 or a 3-5-2 formation. You can play him this week against Norwich, and then you can happily just have him as your first sub for the next couple of weeks. So I think all 3 of those guys are very helpful when it comes to budget.
That's a very good shout. Lastly, though, for all this lateral thought, there's only one way to go for captaincy, surely. It's that City game against Southampton. They took it easy in midweek, but boy, oh boy, they could score a few this weekend, couldn't they? Yeah,
got to feel sorry for them Southampton defenders having to come up against Man City after last week. It's a no-brainer this week. I think it's Sterling and De Bruyne both got a rest in the week, so I think it's got to be one of those two. Aguero's slightly risky because he hasn't been getting game time, so yeah. One on Sterling and De Bruyne, you can't go wrong.
Many thanks. That's Mark McGettigan. A longer chat with him is available on this show's Facebook page. Just a quick bit of feedback before we go. Down the bottom here, Imran. Harvey Barnes is a great differential pick in the FPL. You say only second to Vardy in terms of shots taken. Yeah, and he hasn't played as many games as he this season. Just quickly, Mohammed suggesting Leicester fans will be offended for being discussed in this mid-table show today. They should finish above Arsenal and Man U. No, okay, I'll take your point there. But we talked about them really in the context of that Palace one. Okay, that's all.